We make a superior aggregate and material, and our pigments are excellent quality as well.
PebbleTec, was it kind of like PebbleSheen?
What does that finish look like 90% of the time?
Welcome to the Luxury Outdoor Living Podcast with Mike
and Trey
Farley of Farley Pool Designs. Let's build your paradise. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mike Farley with Luxury Outdoor Living Podcast, sponsored by Farley Pool Designs. And we are here today on a nice brisk day in Dallas, Fort Worth, along with my co-host,
Trey Farley.
And we just want to be thankful to everybody. We just had our Thanksgiving and wanted to thank all of you guys for listening to the episodes that we have. And we got a great episode today. We've got Matt from PebbleTec that's here with us. And Matt, introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Yeah, my name is Matt Sharp, and I'm based out of Phoenix, Arizona. I have been in the swimming pool industry now for, you kind of lose track of a year or two there, somewhere in there, but probably 23 or 24 years, I would say. Vast majority of my experience has been running my own business. I was self-employed for approximately 22 of those years and have experience in all the spectrums of the pool industry, from service to repair. In my early 20s, had a service company, had a few service companies I built and sold, and then had a repair company, and then moved on. Of course, you got to do bigger and better things, and moved on to doing renovations and new pool construction.
Wow.
So
that's a lot. So they're specifically in Phoenix directly, or around the area, or where were you working?
Yeah, just all the Phoenix metro area, Maricopa County. So
Okay.
Originally born in Seattle, so who knew I'd be in the pool business? But that's what happens in life. Make a move and meet somebody, and next thing you know, you're in the pool business, and there's no getting out. We all know that, right? Once you're in, we're stuck for life.
That's what they say. So the chlorine gets in the blood. So just out of curiosity, how did you end up in the pool business?
So I was a young guy. I was probably 19, 20 years old, just moved to Phoenix, and I was on the, going to college. So I had no idea I would end up in the pool industry. I thought I'd be doing something else in an office. But met a guy who was young, making really good money for a 19 or 20-year-old, right? And I said, well, hey, if he can do it, I can definitely do it. And of course, in my 20s, I was absolutely full of energy and motivation. So that's what kicked me off. I think that's what kicks a lot of people off in the pool business is there's a low barrier to entry. There's a lot of different routes you can take in the pool industry to make money. And it's really all, in large part, it's about your internal motivation to go out there. And assuming you're running your own business, which vast majority of the pool industry is self-employed, it's just, if you're hungry and you're motivated, you can be really successful in this industry. So at that time, it was a great match for me, and it's treated me pretty well, like I said, for 24 years now. So
awesome. So one of the things, since you've got a lot of background in the service and repair and everything like that, is pool finishes have changed radically over the years. I'm sure in the 20 years that you've been in the industry, you've seen quite a bit of change. And so I go back to the early 90s when I got involved in it. And, back in the day when I first got started, I would say 80% of the pools were plastered with a white plaster. That's what everybody did. And there was some discussion that plaster, the formalization of the product that was used, has changed over a period of time to introduce a lower price point and also create a not as quality of a product over a period of time. And so I remember when I first ran across your product was, in the mid 90s, there was a lot of good solutions for it. But as someone that serviced pools and did everything, what can you talk about white plaster and, what were the pros and cons for somebody to use that type of material?
Sure. So, yeah, when I started off in the industry, what I was told, and I didn't see it with my own two eyes, but what I was told is that white plaster was significantly more durable, say 30 years ago, because they were adding asbestos into that plaster. You can confirm or deny that, Mike, but I was always told, hey, if you're going to remodel an older plaster pool, make sure you're wearing a respirator. You don't want to breathe that stuff in because there's a good chance there's asbestos in there. And so, and I think it lines up with what I saw in the field. I mean, you could hypothetically see a plaster finish that had been in the pool for 30 plus years. Now, it was probably a little bit beat up. It probably had some staining and things like that, but still a viable finish. Whereas obviously, and I don't know what year asbestos and those additives were banned, but somewhere in the late 80s, I believe, right? Or maybe early 90s. So yeah, the plaster, to your point now, is really just marble sand, and white cement, and that's it. So there's really no significant strength to it, long-term durability. And I think most pool companies nowadays would tell a client, hey, a regular white plaster might last you 5 to 7 years, and that's about as long as you're going to get out of it for that reason. So
Yeah, I would say that's along the lines of what people talk about. And at 5 to 7 years, it's going to look like it was thrashed. And I tell people that, at year two, it feels different than it did most definitely when it was installed, and it's looking different. And, the things I talk to people about is when you have a finish, you want something that's not going to get rough on your feet. It's not going to deteriorate rapidly over a period of time. You don't want something that stains. And the other issue is mottling, which mottling wasn't very noticeable with white plaster because white versus off-white was still white. But when you added color, which became a little bit more popular later in the 90s, people wanted to add color to their plaster. You got all these different hues and shades and things like that. And people used to be like, hey, can you fix that? And I'm like, that's like telling me I fix the grain in the wood. I mean, it's just natural of the product. And so you can't go around fixing it. And they're like, well, it's great in this half of the pool, and then it's crazy in the other half. And I'm like, well, that's just the nature of the product.
What's exactly modeling? Because I've been in the industry over half a decade, and I've heard this term used a lot. And it seems like you're talking about the texture, but I don't even know what it specifically it means. Like when it models. It's like, what does that mean?
That's a good point because it hasn't been a big issue because of some of the products that we use today. But I would describe it, and I used to describe it to people as if you had wood and you put a stain on it, the stain is going to bring out the grain in the wood. Okay, the wood's still smooth. It's still flat. It doesn't change the texture whatsoever. But the darker the stain you put on it, the more pronounced the grain becomes. Okay. So when you added color to plaster, there was a natural grain to it. That's how I would describe it. And so it's going to model. And people used to do all kinds of things to try to eliminate that so it was a consistent color, but it was very problematic.
I gotcha.
Okay. And so it used to be extremely frustrating because you would explain to somebody, this is what it's going to do. And like the last one that I finally was like, that's it, I'm not doing this ever again, is I explained it to them, but it only modeled in the deep end and it didn't model in the shallow end. And they were like, well, fix it, make it model there. And I'm like, I can't. It's out of my control.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that's did you deal with that much, Matt?
oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, even to this day, on certain finishes that we have an actual disclosure that we recommend builders discuss with their clients that covers, you could describe modeling as different things. You could describe it as, modeling. I think if you look up the definition, it's like blotchiness, differential in color. So we describe it as modeling, blotchiness, streaking. Those are all different terminology that we can use to describe that look. But really what you're looking at is the cream of the cement that's on the surface of the finish. So when a hard, we call that a hard trowel finish, right? Like a plaster finish or a plaster-like finish.
Yeah.
That's not an exposed aggregate finish like PebbleSheen or PebbleTec. So on a hard trowel finish, they're looking at a few different things going on there. To your point, Mike, when a plaster or a plaster-like finish has a pigment in it, that mottling and streaking and blotchiness becomes significantly more noticeable than it would on a white plaster pool. There's various reasons for that, but it's the way that the light's reflecting through the pool, through the water onto the pool finish, because that does occur on a white plaster or even a white hard trowel finish. That mottling is still there, When the pool's filled, it somewhat disappears. You can't see it very well at all. But if you were to drain that same pool, as you guys
Yes.
know,
Right.
you would see that mottling with your bare eye. So the way I describe it to people is Venetian plaster, I think, is the best term to describe that to a consumer, because most people know what Venetian plaster looks like. So I think if consumers understand that my pool finish is going to look similar to Venetian plaster and they're okay with that, then that's an acceptable look. And some people don't mind that look in certain aesthetics. You're the designer, so you could describe that better than I can. But certain aesthetics, people might want that look.
Right.
I'm curious, does the amount of different like types of rock? Because I know um, I believe the plastic is called Ocean Blue, has a lot of different rock, different material in it. Does that affect it, the modeling or the appearance, I guess you could say?
So jumping to what the PebbleTec product is, you have very little plaster that's showing because you're seeing rock as the finish.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you don't have a modeling effect because there's very little plaster showing.
Okay.
Okay. So that's why you don't hear the term used
Yeah,
fit
yeah, yeah.
relevance, because 99.9% of my projects we use PebbleSheen, okay, as a particular designer. But we'll dive into the different finishes here in a minute.
Yeah.
And it shows up in Pebble Fina is where
Sure.
it's going to show up, because there's minimal rock in that finish. But it's just, and I used to tell people, this is not going to look like paint. Okay. When you paint wood, okay, you don't see the grain at all.
Yeah.
And you get a flat, consistent color. This is not what it's going to be like. Now, when you get to a pebble finish, because of all the rock in there, again, it doesn't look like paint, but you get a much more consistent color. You don't see the shades and hues. Anyway, so that's a rabbit hole that we ran down.
Yeah, the modeling issue really is kind of a rabbit hole, and there's a lot of different ways to talk about it and explain it. But I would say, again, on a hard child finish, I always recommend to builders, or if I'm talking to a consumer, I say this is really setting the expectation is the most important thing. But yeah, that modeling is, from different things. It's from troweling, right? It's like, so especially with a pigment, you might be able to see the trowel marks and the different, trowel strokes more with a colored finish than you can with white. It's from some of the compaction, like if you do Venetian plaster, the term burnishing, right? When they actually want it to look more modeled, they actually push harder on the trowel on that area to burnish it, which, quote unquote, kind of burns it or gives it that look. So you got a little bit of that going on when you're troweling a pool finish, right? Different pressures of the material being troweled, so that can affect the modeling. Like I said, the way the trowel strokes are. There's a lot of things going on there, and then also with the finish when it cures, there's calcium hydroxide or plaster dust that's on the surface of the pool. So is the startup process correct? Is it getting brushed correctly to mitigate that? If it's not, well, you get a little bit of scale buildup over that plaster dust or that calcium hydroxide, which is a part of the curing process of the cement. And now that's contributing to the unevenness or modeling of the finish. So unfortunately, it's not an easy topic because there's 3 or 4 or 5 different variables going on that can either make the finish look more uniform, or that can cause it to not look so uniform. So
there are all these challenges in the mid 90s associated with plastered pools, life expectancy, staining, texture, modeling. So when the PebbleTec first came out, I was very interested in it because I want to solve problems.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to decrease the issues. And so, this was something that, offered some different solutions. Can you give us a little history on how that actually came into the States and the process of the PebbleTec brand, starting?
So I know a little bit. I know probably, maybe about as much as you. Obviously, I work for PebbleTec, but when PebbleTec came into the U.S. market, it was brought in by a couple of Australians, and they kind of invented the concept of an exposed aggregate pool finish. Obviously at that time I was probably 9 years old, so I don't remember. But obviously it was hugely successful. I mean, it was really a game changer for the pool industry because, as you said, what was there? What was out there was plaster, a marble-based hard trowel pool finish. Again, maybe back 30 years ago with the asbestos, it was great, but without that, it's mediocre at best as far as longevity goes. So, um, yeah, definitely a game changer in 3 or 4 different aspects. As you said earlier, the vast majority of the surface of the pool finish is aggregate, it's rock. So, as far as staining, scaling, anything like that that gets on a pool, well, first of all, if it's a rock aggregate finish, it's a lot harder to visually see staining because it's not absorbing into the cement or concrete in the pool on the pool finish.
So was
Uh,
oh sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was curious, like, because I dealt with PebbleSheen when I was in, because I did a bunch of startups and stuff like that in construction, when I worked in construction. But did PebbleTec, was it kind of like PebbleSheen? Like, if you did have a stain, like a dirt stain, because the plaster's fairly new, you can address it with like muriatic acid. It's not going to ruin the plaster by any means.
Oh, like with the plaster finish?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to be a little more diligent and careful with the plaster finish, just because it's a softer finish. So
Okay.
if you use any sort of acid, it's definitely going to attack it and be a little bit more aggressive. So, using it sparingly. Um, but that's a whole acid washing is a whole different topic. But of course, you can do that to a certain extent, but it's not a solution. If you're not maintaining the water chemistry correctly, and the pool finish is getting stained or scaled every 6 months to a year, uh, realistically with a plaster finish, you might only be able to get away with acid washing that pool 3 or 4 times before you start having some degradation of that finish. And that's similar to PebbleSheen too, but I would say, exposed aggregate finish like PebbleTec or PebbleSheen is going to withstand that acid wash and or withstand various water chemistry conditions a lot better, long term than a softer, plaster, for example, is curing out at say 7,000 psi compressive strength, whereas PebbleSheen is right around 12,000
wow.
psi compressive strength. So there's a big difference in the denseness and the hardness of an exposed aggregate finish versus a typical plaster.
So when it first came out, there was only the PebbleTec product line. And I want to say when it first came out, there was like 8 or 9 different colors, maybe 10 different colors. And the big comment everybody had is, oh, if it's aggregate, it must hurt my feet when I walk on it. And
Right.
the analogy I told people is, because most people I was selling it to, this was the first time they'd ever heard of an aggregate finish. There was no aggregate finishes before this. So this was, you were trying to explain to them what the difference between pebble and plaster were. And I used to explain it to people. It's like walking on, an orange peel has a texture to it. It's not smooth by any means. It's not like an apple peel, but it's still not a, abrasive surface. It's just, it's pebbled, so I used to explain that to people, and it was interesting. So I got more and more people that were interested in the product, and we would install it. And what I found, that it was probably 40% of my clients said, I'm not going to go with it. It's too rough for my feet. Because once I
Right.
started getting some installed, I was always taking people to installations to stick their feet in it, because again, they'd never experienced this. And so I was like, and people were shocked that they expected it to be a lot rougher than it was.
Mm-hmm.
But 40% said, hey, this feels fine to me. And 60% were still, this is too rough on my feet. Okay.
Right.
So that was, what was going on. And then what was it? About 2000, I want to see, maybe 2001, they came out with PebbleSheen. And at that point, I started installing that, but very quickly I dropped PebbleTec as a surface that I recommended to people, unless they wanted something that was really organic looking and they liked the look of the bigger aggregate.
Right.
It wasn't something that they were going to walk on, because if they're going to walk on it, PebbleSheen hands down was smoother than PebbleTec was, more comfortable on the feet, to the point that, quite honestly, I tell people it's one of the smoothest products on the market. So it's still textured, but it's not abrasive on your feet. So, and then they came out with all the other lines, which I'm sorry, I'm kind of digressing a little. I was trying to talk
No,
history, but,
no.
you know, we'll talk about the different product lines and the different pros and cons of them. But so you guys are based there in Phoenix. You were the first original aggregate finish that was on the market. So is there any other things that we should know about the history of the company?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of changes since from when I was a pool builder, actually installing PebbleTec until coming to work for PebbleTec a little less than 4 years ago. So it was a privately owned company, and then it was actually, invested in or owned by a private equity company. And then the big change, approximately 4 years ago, was we were acquired by a company called Oldcastle. And I don't know, are you guys familiar at all with the Oldcastle
Yeah,
company name by
yeah,
chance?
that's a huge landscape material marketing group. I mean, they have everything from pavers to, well, all kinds of stuff. So yes,
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. Mortars and concrete and pavers and blocks and Pebble Tech, and they own a company that does railing and fencing. So yeah, no, to your point, it's the company is really encompassing the whole entire backyard, like anything that has to do with the backyard, and not just that, but larger infrastructure type materials and everything. So um, the point is, though, it's been great for PebbleTec from a perspective of helping us grow our business and ultimately helping us to serve our customers better. So just in the last couple of years, Oldcastle's invested over $2 million, or excuse me, over $4 million
Oh wow.
in our plants. So the pro there is now we've increased our production capacity for material, right? That allows us to invest in, for example, our plant in Mesa. We built a couple massive, storage areas, covered storage areas to actually store more material on hand, right? So when we get our busy season, we're never in a position where we say, oh, you know what, we don't have that material. We need to produce that. We're at a point now where it's like, hey, we have everything on the ground ready for you. We're ready for the rush, order away. So yeah, so basically big improvements in production. So one of the things that of course every company, small or big or large, looks at is safety, right? From an employee perspective. So back before we invested in some of the infrastructure at our plants, we had workers hand stacking 65-pound bags on the pallets all day long. Well, you can imagine the liability in that, twisting and turning and lifting heavy bags all day long. That's a high likelihood of a workers' comp claim right there. Um, so just as an example, we moved to 47-pound bags, so significantly lighter, easier to move. But we also have a robotic bagging machine now. So really now the worker in the plant holds the bag. It gets the material gets bagged into the bag automatically. Bag gets placed on the line, and then we have actually a robot that bags, moves everything on and palletizes all of our material. So not only from a perspective of our company improvement, but even for our customers, because we also have on every Pebble crew, there's a mixer man that's manually picking up all those 94-pound bags of cement and all that aggregate. So even for them, it's a huge advantage too now, because again, they're not lifting 65-pound bags all day. They're lifting 47-pound bags. So
That's awesome. So,
just kind of one example.
oh, I worked in Northern California when PebbleTec first came out. And when I moved back to Texas, in North Dallas, I was like, the company I went to work for used an aggregate finish, and I was like, oh no, we need to use PebbleTec, not this aggregate finish. And one of the things that I explained to them is, it's much more consistent from an application standpoint. And one of the things I used to tell people all the time is I can take your sample and I can throw it in, the sample that I've got in the showroom, and I can throw it in the pool and you won't find it because the whole pool looks like that sample.
Right.
And I said, everybody else has perfect samples. Okay, but you can throw those samples in the pool and you can spot them in a heartbeat because the pool does not look like that sample. Okay. And I said, so we need to use PebbleTec. I said, well, there's a problem, Mike. And I said, what's that? And they said, there's only 2 applicators in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I said, what? And they said, yeah, you have to be certified by PebbleTec to do it. Now, I didn't realize that where I worked in Northern California, we were that applicator's preferred client. Okay. So I had no problems getting PebbleTec because they wanted to work with the company I worked for at Jeremiah Pools. And they said, we can't get on their preferred list of these 2 companies because they don't want to do big projects. Their guys get paid by the job. And so they want to do small pools, and they want to do more pools because they can do 2 shoots a day versus our projects are more like 1 a day. And I was like, well, that's got to be wrong. So I called the 2 applicators up and asked them, I said, hey, I want to have you shoot a pool for me. And they're like, sorry, we're booked. We only work with, we're already locked in with the builders that we need. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You won't do any? And they're like, no. So I called PebbleTec and said, you need a 3rd applicator in DFW. These guys are already booked up.
This is like 2001, 2002?
This was in 90.
Oh, wow.
99.
Okay.
Okay. And so what happened 3 years later was we had the .com economy bust, where economy went down. And all of a sudden, both those applicators are very interested in doing PebbleTec for anybody because their crews weren't full up. And I remember the first job that we did, the owner of the company that I worked with was like, you sold this and I thought you were BSing, but gosh, we can stand and look in the shell of this pool and it is beautiful. So after that, they were very interested in doing our work. And soon thereafter, a 3rd team was added to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so there wasn't quite a jam up as possible. And now Claffey Pools does my installations. And of course, we're the largest account for, the particular applicator that we work with. So they're happy to do all the things that we want to do. But why is it that why don't you let anybody install your product?
Right. So, I mean, obviously we have a very recognizable brand name. That's one. We have a quality product. And so we want to keep the quality high, right? We want to keep our reputation high. If we distributed through a national distributor and anybody could pick up our product that had a truck and a credit card, that's a real dicey proposition because we haven't vetted those contractors. We have no idea if they're going to adhere to, have a level of integrity, right? Or back up if there's poor workmanship on a job, are they going to show back up and handle the issue? So by only selling to a network of authorized applicators, we're obviously selectively choosing which applicators we bring on board, and we vet those applicators. So when someone comes to us, or if we go to someone and say, hey, we could use another applicator in this market, we send obviously they have to meet a couple of requirements. So there is a little bit of a barrier to entry. A lot of the plasters in the market, they don't have a warehouse, they don't have a forklift, they just have a truck and they pull up to a national distributor and they load up the material for that day in the morning. For us, in order to be an authorized applicator, an applicator or a finished company has to have a warehouse, or they have to have a large enough covered storage area to where they can accept 2 or 3 full truckloads of material. So 18 pallets on a truckload. So at a very bare minimum, 36 plus pallets, which that would be on the small side for a warehouse to only be able to accommodate, 2 truckloads. But that's kind of a bare minimum requirement because, again, we don't distribute. We ship our material from our 2 plants, one of them in Mesa, Arizona, and one of them in Slidell, Louisiana, that supplies. So Mesa, Arizona supplies the whole West Coast, Western US, and then our Slidell, Louisiana plant supplies a larger section of the country, which is the Midwest and basically the whole East Coast. So long story short, there is a little bit of a barrier to entry, right? There's an investment that our applicators make in their business to be able to accept full truckloads of material. And obviously, from a financial perspective, not everyone can meet that requirement, right? Somebody says, oh, I have to buy whatever the number is, $25,000 to $40,000 worth of material at a time. I can't do that. So that, disqualifies a lot of people from becoming PebbleTec applicators. So we want those applicators, again, to have the resources at their shop or company the financial resources as well, right? Which says a lot. So if they're able to buy that much material at a time and they're able to invest in a facility to store that material with a forklift, then it kind of goes without saying that if there was an issue on a single pool, they also likely have the funds to rectify that situation. And that's unfortunately, hate to say it, but that can't always be said with some of these one truck plastering companies that are out there. And of course, being in this industry, I hear the bad stories all the time, right? Like
Oh yeah.
low price, as soon as the job's done, something goes wrong, and then you can't get a hold of them to rectify the issue.
Well, imagine your
So
pool being plastered the wrong color. Like just something simple like that. It's like, oh well, I don't have enough money to jackhammer it out and replaster because it's a small crew. So
right.
yeah.
So, is there a training process that how come every single pool that I saw, like I said, when I worked in California and then when I started using, why are they all consistently the same? The finish. I mean, that's not the case with most pool plaster companies. I mean, so what makes y'all different in that aspect?
Well, I would say it's a combination. So a lot of it, I mean, let's face it, we make a superior aggregate and material, and our pigments are excellent quality as well. But the vast majority, and I'll give credit where credit's due to our applicators, the vast majority of us of a smooth, even, well compacted, well exposed aggregate finish is really the work of our applicators. You can take a great material, which is PebbleTec, and if it's installed by the wrong person, it's not going to turn out very well. So, I, in large part, I would give credit to our applicators, and then one of the differentiators with PebbleTec is that we have a dedicated quality assurance team, which none of the other competitors in our space have. So, a lot of our competitors, me as the sales rep, I would also be the quality assurance rep. So for us, we have a dedicated team that handles not only issues, problematic issues, and helps to resolve those with the customers and with the applicators, but our quality assurance team is there on a proactive basis as well, to your point, to ensure that the quality that our applicators fit, the quality of our applicators finish that they're putting out is good. So, um, I hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, basically it's a combination of the applicator's existing experience in installing finishes, and obviously we likely wouldn't approve them if their finish quality wasn't up to par with our standards from the start. But to your point, we're there to also, the quality assurance team is also there on a proactive basis to do ongoing training and support with some of our applicators. So for example, we sign an applicator up today and they have this 6-man crew that's A+ work, excellent. Well, over time, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, some of the members of that crew change. So
Mm-hmm.
they might have some employees leave, they might have some come. So it's not just vetting the applicator once today and then walking away. It's continuously ensuring that their crews are trained and up to speed with the proper techniques and quality.
So
So
are y'all swinging by different jobs like 1 year, 2 year, 3 years later and just checking out and see how the quality is? Like how does that process work? Like
we generally not on that. So a lot of times what we do, so our QA team is kind of divided between, again, going to issues where there's a concern. That's obviously a big part of what we do. But also, and vast majority of those are water chemistry, by the way, but we can get into that conversation later. But so they're divided between that. And then also if they don't have any quality assurance tickets, if you will, to go out on, then yeah, absolutely. They'll go buy a job and they'll stop, call an applicator and say, hey, what do you have on the books for tomorrow? And they'll go out there and kind of vet and look at the quality of the finishes that are being put out by our crews, or by our, authorized applicators crews, I should say. They're not our crews.
One of the things that I'd noticed over a period of time and having to deal with crews that weren't yours and then your crews is they seem to trowel it more and bring more of the pebble up to the surface and rinse off more of the plaster. And a lot of companies, I think, are like, oh, we did it once or twice. Oh, we're good. We can walk away. It seemed like these crews do it over and over and over and over again to bring more of the rock. So it's more of a, a uniform finish. Is there is that part of the training process that they go through on how many times they trial something, or is there standards, or I mean, anyway, I was just curious about that.
Well, so yeah, so we do, again, we have quality assurance reps that do training, and I would say that we don't have. If you ask a plaster company, there's different techniques. There's different ways to achieve the same finish. So to your point, it could be I mean, there's a lot of variables there. There's the ratio of rock to cement, which of course we have our batch formula, which will dictate that. There's additives that can go into the pebble or plaster mix that dictates how fast the material sets up. So for example, in the summer, the most applications want to delay the set, right? Because you don't want the whole finish to go off and cure while you're still trying to trowel it and expose it. So there's those type of additives. And then in the winter, there's the opposite. So in the winter, the material is not setting up because it may be a cold day. It may be 40 degrees outside. So they may have to use a additive to actually speed up the set so they can actually get out of that pool without spending a whole day in that backyard on that one pool finish. So there's just so many variables that go into that, as far as even the types of cement. There's various manufacturers of cement. And so different crews are accustomed to working with a certain brand, and each of those brands have their own characteristics as far as how the material sets. So there's not one answer to that question. There's different ways to achieve the same result. So I guess my answer to that question would be, what does the final finish look like when it's done, right? Is it, as you said, is it well compacted to where you don't see what we would call overexposure, right? Where you don't see bald spots where there's cement. That'd be an example of overexposure. Or if it was exposed too much, so if the crew rinsed it too much, that would make the surface rough to where it wasn't well compacted and smooth. Or that can lead to pebbles kind of falling out of the matrix, and again, a rough spot. Or it could actually be underexposed to where you don't see all the rocks and you see too much cement over the surface. So there's a lot of different variables there, but I would say that the really the true test is, what does that finish look like when it's done? Does it look uniform throughout the whole pool? Are there areas of underexposure or overexposure, or does it look very nice and uniform? 98% of the pool looks nice and uniform. Here's the thing I think consumers need to understand that's important, is that there's no such thing, unfortunately, as perfection on a pool finish. As you mentioned earlier, when you're talking about finishes, it's not like painting a wall. Well, it's the same thing with a pool finish. I could go to any pool with the best crew that we have in Phoenix, and I could probably pick out something. Maybe it's very small. Maybe it's a a quarter-inch area or a half-inch or something really, really small. But I could probably find something if I wanted to look hard enough. But I would say, to your point, that the vast majority of our applicators' workmanship is top-notch work. That it's the best quality finishes that you're going to find in the pool industry.
Now, one thing I do want to point out, because this is something that I've had customers say, we just had our PebbleTec pool filled up, and our Polaris is running around in the pool, and there's a lot of rock in the bag. Is this a dysfunctional pool? So can you address that so people understand what's reality? I mean, you're going to have some pebble that's going to come off,
Absolutely.
after an installation's done. So
yeah. So one of the things that the majority of our applicators do is they buff, particularly when we're talking about PebbleSheen, which, as you said, is nationwide, is our most popular finish line. So PebbleSheen, most applicators are going to buff the flat areas of the finish, right? So the Baja shelf or swim step, whatever your terminology is for it, the steps, and the shallow part of the pool where your feet are, where you're walking. So that buffing process actually kind of helps speed up the sloughing off of pebbles, if you will, because we're going to kind of knock down any little high points of that aggregate and really get it pretty smooth. To your point, when you feel one of our PebbleSheen samples that we send out, those are actually buff samples. And I agree with you completely. When you feel that with your hand, does it have some texture? Yes. Is it rough? No. It actually is fairly smooth to the touch. So that buffing really helps that out. But to your point, yes, it's completely normal for there to be some pebbles that you'll find in a basket at your pump or in the cleaner, little leaf canister that's floating in the pool next to the cleaner. That is 100% normal, because some little, pebbles will kind of slough off, maybe ones that a couple of them here and there that didn't get compacted really, really well, right? So there's one kind of on the surface. or, you know, little areas like in the skimmer, or some debris gets kind of cleaned out of the returns right when you turn the pool on, right? Some stuff's going to blow out of there. So there's a lot of different variables there, but yeah, that is normal in the first couple of weeks as you're brushing that pool for there to be a little bit of pebbles. And I mean, it seems like a lot when you look and you see a little handful of pebbles, you know, that's, you know, in the palm of your hand or something. But if you can envision how many pounds of aggregate are in a typical pool, and I could do the math really quick, but we're talking about like thousands of pounds of rocks in one pool finish, right? So you're talking about a handful that might only be 4 ounces worth of stone. It's very, very little compared to how much aggregate is in that pool finish.
Right.
So, yeah. But yes, completely normal.
Okay. So there are, and we've talked a little bit about this already. There are different finishes that are available through your company. So, do you want to run down a list of them, or how do you want to? So,
this podcast is for the homeowner, typically. So, if someone's on the fence of what material they're going to be using, it'd be good for them to understand pros and cons, what the differences are of the finishes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, I start off with PebbleTec. So earlier we talked about it. PebbleTec is the original, kind of our flagship product that got us started. To your point, Mike, PebbleTec in many markets is not very popular. So really, I can confidently say in the whole Western U.S., we do sell some PebbleTec, but very little, just because most consumers' preference is to have a finish with less texture or smoother. And PebbleSheen definitely fits that bill over PebbleTec. So surprisingly, though, PebbleTec in Florida, in some markets in the South or Southeast, like Florida, is actually really popular. So a lot of builders and applicators out there actually prefer PebbleTec over PebbleSheen. So it's definitely a market preference, and I don't know if it's a level of comfortability, right? If you've been installing PebbleTec since 1991 and you know how it compacts and you know how it travels, you just stay with it. But yeah, for whatever reason, PebbleTec is actually very popular there. But in the West, it's PebbleSheen is the bread and butter. But yeah, to your point earlier, what I tell people about PebbleTec is visually, PebbleTec actually looks very nice because you can see the differential in the aggregate. It's a larger aggregate, so you can see the differential in the color of the aggregate. And I think it provides a little more depth looking at it. Whereas PebbleSheen, because the aggregate is smaller, the finish tends to look more uniform in color. So if you pick a particular color, it's going to look fairly uniform throughout the pool with that shade.
Okay. So is there a con other than texture with PebbleTec?
I would say that's really it. It's just really the texture, you know, and again, now another thing to consider, and this is something to consider for all of our finish lines, and something I would tell someone to ask their contractor or their applicator is this particular applicator familiar with this finish type? So that's a really important question, because if, for example, we sell very little, if any, PebbleTec in Arizona, for example, and somebody says, hey, I want PebbleTec. Well, check with that applicator to make sure that applicator has experience with PebbleTec. Now, hypothetically, our applicators should be able to install it. But like anything else, if the crews are working with a particular finish 98% of the time, and you throw something different in there, right, that they're not accustomed to, well, you may be rolling the dice a little bit on the results of what you're going to get with that finish.
Right. Okay. So the pro of the product is, you know, well, what are the pros of PebbleTec versus
the depth of the profile? So it has more. You can tell what the stone is actually, right? Because the stone,
I would say so.
Bigger. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Other pros to it you can think of?
I would say, well, there are a couple, you know, like I said, some of the colors just appear a little bit different with tech, just from the aggregate itself, right? So it does give the water in the pool a little bit different of a look. But I wouldn't say really any con.
Do y'all have the same? Because we deal with PebbleSheen mostly. That's most of what I know. But like, are the colors the exact same in PebbleSheen and?
They're different names.
Are
that confuses
Is it the same combination of rock though?
So there's different names. There are some different batch formulas with PebbleTec
Okay.
versus Sheen. There's a couple of them,
Like
but a
Caribbean.
lot of them you could pick out, right, the corresponding name for PebbleTec that corresponds to PebbleSheen, and it's a very similar, if not identical, batch formula with as far as the pigment choice and the rock selection.
So Blue
Just
Surf might have a different name. And
Yeah, I don't know about that one. Is there a PebbleTec Blue Surf?
there is, and now you're going to throw me off guard because again we don't we don't sell Blue Wave.
oh, okay,
Blue
there
Wave.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah, so it's funny because I know most of the vintage names, but like I said, we sell such little tech. I don't talk about it on a daily basis. Right?
Right.
I don't have all the names in my head as
like
much. So.
Tahoe. I thought the names for the original PebbleTec were some of them were cooler. So like Tahoe Blue was blue granite.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Wait,
know,
do y'all have a black eclipse in the PebbleTec? Because I know for the PebbleSheen that's the
we
newest
don't
color.
actually.
Okay.
We don't
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
Cool.
So
Yeah, because that black eclipse aggregate is a very specific sizing. The way that we actually get it, the way that it's received into us, so it would actually be too small to make into PebbleTec.
one thing while we're on tech, let's talk about your aggregate. Where does do these
sourcing it?
Sourcing it.
Yeah.
So, I know that, and what I explain to people is there's standard colors and there's upgraded colors, and for the most part, the upgraded colors aren't quarried in the U.S. They're quarried in other places,
Like Chile.
So, can you expound a little bit on the aggregates?
Sure. Yeah. So to your point, obviously some of when it comes to a standard versus an upgrade, we don't necessarily dictate that. That's the pricing is dictated by our applicators, obviously. So some applicators would call one thing an upgrade, others would call it a standard, right? So we don't have any real control of that. However, to your point, in most cases, an upgrade is going to be a finish that's composed of our aggregate that's coming from from overseas, right? So obviously, for example, our Arctic white, our pure white, is coming from. I'm not supposed to say exactly where it's coming from. I mean, most people probably know, but it's coming from near Australia, further than Australia, so way out there. So obviously, it costs a lot of money to ship that aggregate over to Louisiana or a port in California.
Yeah.
So yeah, historically our pure white, like our Arctic white or our cool blue, those are some of our most expensive finishes. And then again, like you said, that pure black, that black eclipse, again, coming from a far off exotic destination, and it's more expensive to get here. So therefore the end user cost is higher.
Do those locations ever change, like where you get the quarries from? Because it's just a specific type of rock you need. It doesn't really matter where it comes from.
Well, it does. It actually does change because, we're talking about, natural sources, right? Like we're talking about sometimes this aggregate comes from riverbeds or streams. Sometimes it comes from beaches. It comes from all over the place. And so, for example, at one point in time, we had this really nice black tumbled stone from Chile, and something happened on the regulatory front where they said, hey, you can't mine this off the beach anymore. And we lost that source. So yeah, that stuff is constantly changing, right? As far as or even sometimes in certain pockets where we're getting our material from, it can change. It can go from looking one way to changing, and that's one of the important things about our QA vetting is when we get that material into our plants, we actually have a whole QA setup, and we have literally different samples of every single batch of material that we receive in, so we can say, hey, you know what, we received this material 3 months ago and this is what it looked like.
Yeah.
And then we're going to compare it to the new shipment to make sure that it's consistent. Because to your point, Mike, if we make samples and we just blindly accept the material, we start selling it to customers or making samples out of it, and that aggregate consistency isn't the same, we're going to have a problem, because that sample that you're going to drop into a pool now, if it varies, that's not going to be good, because a consumer is going to say, well, wait a minute, this is what I went off of when I picked my finish. My pool looks like something completely different. So yeah, that's really important to us, is vetting that consistency when those aggregate shipments come in, to ensure that it is the same as the last load, that we're producing material that, now obviously there could be very, very slight variations because it is a natural stone, but we want to ensure there's no major variations that are going to create a problem. So, but yeah, to your point on the sourcing, we're we're constantly on the hunt for new sources, if there are new sources out there, new quarries that we can buy from potentially. And we do actually own one of our largest aggregates that we use in our PebbleSheen. We actually own that quarry, but again, some of the material we're getting from different places throughout the world and importing it in. So yeah, that's a constant moving target on that. And then, not just because the material is black or just because it's white and it's the same sizing as to what we're looking for, it doesn't actually mean that it's a suitable material, because it could have contamination in there. The material could be too soft where it doesn't, it's not going to be conducive to withstanding the water chemistry in a pool. So there's all those factors that are at play when we're vetting, the aggregate that we're using.
Or it has iron in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of chemistry that goes into it. So
yeah, that's a problem.
oh yeah. So just this topic in general, it makes me think about like, and I don't know, that maybe I'm wrong, but how are you able to keep like prices consistent? I know things change in the economy and stuff like that, but if like with like, if you have a quarry that dries up or a limitation to it, it feels like some of the product might be scarce at some points in the year. Are y'all able to, keep them a consistent price for, people that are trying to buy it to apply it?
For the most part, yes. Just like everyone else, with all the inflationary, pressure that's going on in our country.
Yeah.
There's been some very, very slight price increases. I mean, we're talking to the tune of single digits. I mean, 3%, 2%, very small. And, we're really not capitalizing on, we're not trying to take advantage of those inflationary pressures, right, to raise prices. We're just trying to cover our cost increases with, as you said, transportation costs, and all the other associated overhead with our business. So that's really all we're trying to do. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the best answer. And then of course, negotiation, like anything else, right? We're negotiating with suppliers. There's always a price aspect to that as well. And I'm not a part of that piece of the company, but I presume that we're always, trying to advocate for the best rates to pass on to our customers.
So PebbleSheen would be the next product. Well, one last question on PebbleTec.
We hit PebbleSheen, didn't we?
Well, I don't think we really did. But
Okay.
PebbleTec, is there a life expectancy difference? Well, what do you expect a product to last? How long?
So that's the most common question everybody asks, and the answer is it's largely, if not 99%, dictated by proper maintenance. Water chemistry maintenance is really the key. So I could take the best, I could take PebbleSheen, the best installed finish you've ever seen, and if the water chemistry is correct, we could ruin that finish in 3 months.
Wow.
Right?
100%.
Or on the opposite spectrum, you see pools, it's amazing. You see pools that are 25, 30 years old, a PebbleTec finish or a PebbleSheen finish that look absolutely great. They look great. Matter of fact,
there's no 30-year-old PebbleSheen.
Maybe not 30. I might be pushing it, but I mean, I think we can get into the mid-20s, right?
Yeah, I know, because mine's one of the oldest out there in DFW.
It's what, 26 or something? 24?
No, it's just 22.
22, okay.
22.
Still looks good though.
No.
Still looks good?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, looks great.
Only did one acid wash.
Yeah, we've done one acid wash ever on it. So
see, that's incredible.
Yeah,
and it's held up beautifully, and it's smooth, and I mean it's great.
See, with PebbleTec, I feel like it would have a less life expectancy, because when I think of acid washes, you're like stripping a layer from that plaster. And since it's a bigger, just overall, rock, I'd imagine that you have less layers to play with before it becomes brittle.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, for example, on tech, if you were to, overexpose that from aggressive water chemistry, right, acidic or corrosive aggressive water, and, you dissolve basically the cement matrix that's holding the stone in place. That's what you're doing when you start losing pebbles,
right,
with an older pool. So you do that and you lose a PebbleTec size pebble, or you lose a bunch of them in one area. It actually is going to be more obvious to the eye versus PebbleSheen, right? Because it's a larger aggregate. So
yeah.
And probably rougher too, right? Because you get a rough spot like that with a bunch of missing aggregate that's a larger size, you're going to feel it on your feet or hands, etc. Whereas I think PebbleSheen, if that was to happen, in an isolated area, it wouldn't be as noticeable, and or an applicator could potentially go in there and fix it by doing a buff or a polish and kind of smoothing that area out, not 100% fix it, but blend it in is, I guess, the best way I could just say that.
Yeah.
And hypothetically, you could do, if it was just an isolated area, obviously a good applicator could do a nice pebble patch of repair on the area if necessary. But if unless it's disintegrated all throughout the whole pool, now you have another problem. You just really need to probably resurface at that point.
To that point, I've been to a bunch of different classes where people talk about, especially with like ASR, and nothing related, but I remember this guy I was talking about, and he was saying that, we think about plaster as being this waterproof coat, and he was like under the opinion that it's not waterproof at all. So some homeowners might not know if this is or not waterproof. Do you think that plaster is waterproof?
No, so it's definitely not waterproof. It is watertight, but water will migrate through an interior finish and find its way to the pool shell. So, and that goes for any of it. It doesn't matter what brand, what finish line, because they're all, cement based, white cement based finishes. So it does a good job. I mean, it's not like water is just pouring through there, but if there's an expectation that there's going to be no moisture underneath that shell, that's a flawed expectation. So yeah, definitely, in addition to a quality finish, we just, what I would say is, the finish is the beauty layer, right? Like it's the icing on top of the cake that's giving it the look and creating that watercolor that you're going after. But yes, it's not a structural product. It's not a waterproofing product. So all those type of things need to be taken care of by your pool contractor prior to the interior finish going on. So the penetrations that are going through the wall of the pool, those need to be, ideally, those need a separate waterproofing protocol, or as the pool industry likes to call it, damp proofing, because we don't ever want to say that something's 100% waterproof. So I learned that one from a Genesis class or a water shape class, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So one of the things you just touched on that I think y'all do a very good job on is making the client understand color. And this is one of the things that the first thing I do with clients to try to help in this process is when we start talking about color, I immediately go to photographs, and I want to show them finished pools. And I'm like, I want you to pick the color that you like. I don't want you to look at a sample and say, I like this one. Okay. Because it will never, ever, ever look like this sample that I've got in my hand. Okay.
Unless it's on the sun bench.
Well, even on the sun bench, it doesn't look like that because it still has it's wet in that area. So what I tell people is we're adding water, and the water reflects the sky. And it depends, first of all, what your watercolor looks like depends on the color of the sky. Okay.
Sure.
So today in Dallas, Fort Worth, the sky is a nasty looking gray. Your watercolor looks totally different than when it's a nice blue color. Okay. And so you're going to add that hue to the color that that you're looking at. So the one that throws everybody the most was, and I'll never forget, luckily I was not the person that experienced this. It was Sandy Beach. Okay. And the client came in and chose Sandy Beach from a color sample. Okay. And they went and installed his pool. And this guy came in and was furious because they had installed the wrong color in his pool, because his pool was green and he wanted the sandy beach colored pool. And what they explained to everybody at that point in time was what I was just explaining. You got to add the blue of the sky to the color of and you get blue sky and you get brown sand and you mix them together and you get green. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And people are shocked when I show them a picture of Sandy Beach and they're like, oh, I kind of like this color. And I'm like, this is the one you're going to install to get that color. And they're like, there's no way in the world. There's no way that color makes this color pool. And I'm like, oh, 100% it does. Okay. And so you guys over the years have come up with all kinds of and one of the things, we have a huge library of the vast majority of the popular colors. And so we can show them all those colors. But sometimes if they're like, well, I'm interested in something that's an offshoot over here, I'll send them to y'all's library, because y'all have a huge library. And people are like, how in the world is this color the same one as this next one that I look at? And I said, well, it has to do with what's around it and what it's reflecting and how light or dark it is. And I said, the darker pools reflect a lot more stuff. And so versus the lighter pools. But you guys, and the depth of the water, which you guys have addressed as well, has a real good, the deeper the pool, the more reflection you get. So therefore, like Trey said, on the bench, it's going to look close to the color of the sample. But, if it's 8 feet deep, it looks nothing like that. So,
Yeah.
So podcast is for homeowners. So how do they find that resource?
Yeah. So a couple things. This is a very pertinent topic. We have a tool on our website. Go to PebbleTec.com, PebbleTec.com. And there's at the top, there's a tab labeled Design. Hover over that tab, and the first option you come to is watercolor selection. So it's actually a tool for that exact purpose. So someone can say, you know what, and you can go through it really quickly and kind of play with it. You can say, hey, I think I want a medium blue color. So you can click on the button that says medium blue, and then you can actually choose your finish line. So you can choose medium blue PebbleSheen, and then the tool populates those colors that meet that criteria. So it's going to populate blue surf, aqua blue, blue granite. I think French gray might be in there. So it's going to populate those colors that meet that criteria. And then you can go through all the finish lines. So you can say medium blue, I want to see what PebbleTec looks like, or I want to see what PebbleEssence looks like in a medium blue. What colors meet that criteria for that finish line? So they can kind of go through it, on their own time, and at least start narrowing down, right? Because when you start off with all these options, you're like, holy cow, I don't know where to go here. But if you spend a little bit of time, most people can say, you know what, I don't like that black finish. That's way too dark. And then they start, but I don't like the white finish either. That's way too light. It looks like a plaster pool. So you start kind of whittling down what you're looking for, and hopefully you can narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 selections. So that's one resource that's great. And actually, as we speak, we're kind of refining that a little bit, because to your point, in a couple of the galleries, there's some photos that are, the way I look at it is, hey, what does this color look like 90% of the time, right? To your point, I could take blue surf at a dusk condition, and it looks completely different than it looks like in full light. So
100%.
to me, we want to have a variety of those photos. We want to show this is what it looks like at sunrise and sunset. But if it's radically off, right, we don't want to highlight that, because then someone says, well, my pool doesn't look anything like that. So we want to have the variety, but also, again, what does that finish look like 90% of the time? So that's one good way. Now, here's a resource I started using recently that I think is excellent as well. And we spoke about this earlier before we jumped on here. But I know that, what did you say? 40 of your designs are in our World's Greatest Pools books, or winners for our World's Greatest Pools contest.
Yeah.
Only 40?
They only allow me to enter so many. That's the problem. So
40's a lot, man.
40's a lot. So anyway, but
so on our website though, we have, if you go down, you can find it on there. We actually have digital copies of all of our World's Greatest Pool books. And the last 4 years, I think starting in 2022, we actually, at the very like the glossary or the table of contents at the very back of the book, we have all the colors categorized. So if someone wanted to look at a pool with Arctic White, they could go there, and it shows you the page numbers that Arctic White's on. And those are really nice photographs, because those are, we require a certain resolution on those photos. So they're professional photographs and really nice projects. So that's also a really good resource for people to look at real world projects with particular finishes in them. So I would highly recommend that as well.
2 things to point out. I shoot almost 100% of my pools at dusk.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I don't have shadows on it. So it's easier to photograph the whole project. But again, to your point, that's the only time it looks like that is at dusk. Okay. Or at sunrise, either one of those. It looks totally different in the middle of the day, with the full sun exposure, with a blue sky. So yeah, that. And then the other thing that a lot of times when people look at photographs is they're right at dusk and the LED lights are on, and
Right.
that's totally throwing the color off
Right.
100%. So we try not to use any of those photographs when we're actually selecting, because that's skewing the color and could be in 50 different directions.
Mm-hmm.
You have no earthly idea. Is the LED light green, or is it blue, or is it red, or whatever it is? It's skewing the color aspect of it. But color is an important part of it. But part of the fun of it is it also changes all times of the day. So, it's kind of cool how it looks and interacts and that type of thing. So,
That's
I
really
agree. No, I agree 100%. I have a blue granite PebbleSheen finish in my pool, and I have multiple pictures of it different times a day. And, particularly on a cloudy or overcast day, it doesn't look anything like it looks like in the sun. So
right.
in some regard, that's a good thing that you get a little, like, even for glass tile or something, you get a little bit of play on light. It kind of changes a little bit. To your point, I don't mind that, but yeah, other people, maybe they don't, well, I mean, I've had this happen even as a PebbleTec rep. I think it was blue surf, and the homeowner looked at it on our gallery, right? And obviously it looks bright blue. It's the brightest blue that we have in our PebbleSheen lineup. But unfortunately, the way her house was, and literally I was standing in this homeowner's backyard at noon, middle of the day, but for whatever reason, the way that the house creates a shadow over the pool, even though it's on their back patio, like half or more of the pool was in shade. So the homeowner was saying, "This is not what I wanted. This is not what I wanted." So I kept trying to, I tried to point out, well, your pool, the photos you looked at are more than likely in full sun, and your pool right now, we're in the middle of the day, which hypothetically we should be seeing full sun in your pool, but we're not, and that's why it looks so radically different.
Right.
So
So
yeah, it is a pertinent topic.
mine's surrounded by oak trees. So, only it's shaded, but it's also reflecting green.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
I've got ocean blue, which is a highly reflective material in the first place. So it looks nothing like a pool that's in full sun, in the middle of a backyard without a tree. I mean, they don't look anything alike. And so that's something I try to make people understand is
yeah,
you have to understand what is around it's going to impact it. And that's what your gallery is nice, because it shows not one or two, but countless pictures of the same color. And so you have to, my advice is, as you look at the gallery, look at the things that are around it to help understand, why they're different colors. So anyway.
no, absolutely.
So we keep going down rabbit holes. So Sheen, is there particular pros to the Sheen product or a con to the Sheen product?
Yeah, so I mean, overall, if you look at PebbleSheen compared to, say, well, I'm going to compare it to like a hard troweled finish, like PebbleFina or PebbleQuartz, right? So the compressive strength, number one, is the highest that we have of any finish line. Its density or compressive strength PSI is 12,000 PSI. So that's, obviously the denser, the harder a material is, the more impervious it's going to be. Well, more resistant it's going to be to pool water chemistry conditions, the various conditions that occur in a pool. I would say number one. Number two, the nice thing about it is it's a little more forgiving than certain finishes. So again, if there was a little area that was underexposed or overexposed, our applicators can generally fix that to where a homeowner is not going to be able to notice it.
Mm-hmm.
You can polish it, you can expose an area with a little more acid. So I would say from a repair kind of touch up perspective, if that ever became necessary, it's more forgiving than a lot of our finishes. And then again, like I said earlier, vast majority of our applicators are buffing PebbleSheen. So that buffing process, I should say this, PebbleSheen is conducive to that buffing process, right? So for example, finishes with glass, we can't buff those because it would scratch the glass and it would look terrible. But PebbleSheen is conducive to doing that buffing process, which really creates a nice, smooth, again, back to the smooth topic. It's textured, but it's smooth to the touch. So I think those are kind of the pros of PebbleSheen. And again, earlier we spoke about with PebbleSheen, due to the aggregate size, the coloration of the pool, I would say, is fairly uniform amongst all of our different color options. Um, just simply due to that sizing of the material.
So just going back, PebbleTec is their most popular color.
Well, I would say again, since we don't sell a lot in the West, I would say it's probably in line with our PebbleSheen, probably Blue Wave, which is equivalent to Blue Wave Tech is equivalent to
Blue
Blue
Surf.
Surf.
Blue Surf
Yeah.
Sheen.
Yeah.
I have to get with my Florida rep on that one, or I have to look up. I have to get into our. We have some data, Tableau. I have to get in there and crunch some data and see, because that's actually a great question.
So old
For-
school, back when I sold it, it was by far Tahoe blue. Was the
Tahoe, yeah.
was the most popular color, but Blue Wave didn't exist at that point in time. So, in
Right.
my knowledge, in dealing with the product line, there's only been 2 colors that have changed over a period of time, and that was Blue Surf came out probably 7 years ago or something like that, and this year a year ago we came out with Black Eclipse. So other than that, y'all don't change your product line up a whole lot. So it's been consistent over a long period of time.
I feel like Blue Surf is older than 7 years.
I don't.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter.
I think so too, but yeah, I'm not 100% on that, because I was when I was doing a lot of building and remodeling over the, say probably started maybe 14, 15 years ago. I think Blue Surf was available then, so I'm thinking it's at least 10, maybe 15 years old, something like that.
It probably is.
Yeah.
I'm an old guy in the pool industry, so I'm trying to
So many
reference
blues.
So, well, I can remember vividly when they brought the sample to me and they were like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "All right, I'm not going to have to upgrade everybody to
PebbleBrilliance.
Prism Blue."
Oh, Prism, yeah.
Prism Blue was I sold a ton of Prism Blue before Blue Surf existed, and I never sell Prism Blue anymore.
So, do y'all have a polished finish?
We do. Yeah, we have a finish called Pebble Breeze.
Pebble Breeze. Okay.
So yeah, when we talk about a polished finish, I mean it's actually smoother than plaster, because it's not just troweled. It's actually troweled on day one. And so the Pebble Breeze is a combination of actually Pebble Fina, which is our hard troweled plaster like finish. So it's a combination of that material, and then it also has Pebble Tec aggregate as well as glass in it. So it's a combination of 3 or 4 different aggregates. Maybe I have to look at the batch formula, but anyway, so the point is it gets troweled the first day, and then the crew comes back the following day. And I mean, it depends on the size of the pool, of course, but we're talking, 4, 5, 6 men or 6 workers in there with polishing discs, polishing pads, hand polishing that pool finish. So it's awesome from a perspective of smoothness. I mean, it's by far, when we talk about smooth, that's going to be the smoothest finish that you're going to find. But the flip side is it's very labor intensive, and with that comes a higher cost. So it looks great too. Our quality assurance director has it in his pool, the bright blue Pebble Breeze, and then actually our former president has it in his pool as well. And every time I look at those pools, I mean, they look incredible. The blue pigment in those looks absolutely amazing. But yeah, so the only downfall of that is it just costs, really, because most applicators are going to charge a fair amount for that finish just due to the labor that's necessary to accomplish it.
What's the expectancy on how long it's gonna last?
That finish has a little bit lower compressive strength than PebbleSheen. So kind of back to the water chemistry discussion, if it's properly maintained, I don't see, it should last 15, 20 years. But if the water chemistry in that finish, or even some of the other hard troweled finishes like Pebble Fina or PebbleQuartz, is improper, I would say mainly if it's like, aggressive water, like low pH, acidic, aggressive water, it's going to wear that breeze finish definitely quicker than an aggregate finish like Tech or Sheen would.
Do you think it's more prone to, because you said it had the more hard troweled plastic? It had part of that, and it still has aggregate in it. But do you think it's prone to have more like dirt stains? Because like in construction, you can have it very well maintained, and then some guy comes by with a leaf blower or something, and it blows.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen that on plaster finishes where it just stains like crazy. And I think it doesn't do that with the PebbleSheen. So I'm just wondering what this product does.
Yeah, I mean with Pebble Breeze specifically, because more of the surface area is cement. You actually seeing more of the cement versus aggregate.
Okay.
Any finish like that that has more cement on the surface of the finish is going to be more prone to staining, right?
Okay.
Because that's what's absorbing that stain. A rock's not going to absorb a stain.
No.
So it's that cement that's absorbing the stain. And that's what you're visually seeing when you're looking down at the pool finish. So
That makes
yes, I
sense.
would agree with you that finish definitely would be more prone to staining. However, here's the really cool thing about any polish finish, including our Pebble Breeze, that I really love about it. Initial cost is higher, but when you have to, let's say it does have some staining, or let's say it has scale, calcium scale. The cool thing about it is you can drain it down, repolish it, and you basically have a brand new finish, right? And
You don't have to do acid wash?
well, yeah, an acid wash might be part of that equation in the case of like scale, right? So it kind of burns some of that scale off.
Okay.
But in conjunction with another polish, you could basically revive a polished finish. I don't know an amount of times. You don't take off a lot of the material when you do a polish. So assuming assuming the thickness of that pool finish is 3/8 inch to a half inch, geez, you could probably drain and repolish a polish finish 5-6 times or more and still have a viable pool finish, pool
Oh, yeah.
surface.
No, that's awesome. What do you think the difference would be like between, okay, we're deciding, like, say I own a construction company, a building company, and we're building pools, and we had to make a decision. It's like, okay, at this point we need to drain it and acid wash and polish versus we just need to drain it and polish.
Yeah, I mean that's just it's really just a test. It's like, some of those things you don't know, even with an acid wash, right? Like, oh, okay, let's default to starting off gentle. That would be what I would always recommend, right? Like, let's do the easiest, least aggressive thing we can do to try to revive this finish. So I would say start off with that and say, oh, do a test spot. What does it look like? Oh, it didn't touch it. This scale is so heavy that didn't even touch it. Okay, let's increase the strength of ratio of acid to water and do it again and see what results we get. So I'd say it's just case specific, right? It's just
Yeah.
like you got to do a test. You have to start gentle and get more aggressive as necessary. But there's a limit, right? Because sometimes a pool can be in such bad shape or have such heavy scale that it's kind of a cost benefit analysis. It's like, well, we can go really heavy on this acid and get the scale off, but then we might be, compromising the integrity of this pool finish. So that's just a conversation with the homeowner to decide, hey, this is where we're at. This is what we see. How do you want to proceed here?
Yeah, sorry. I asked that question. There's so many different elements when it comes to stuff like that that can play and change different things. So, yeah, that makes sense.
So, is there other pros and cons since we were on Breeze?
Yes.
Talking about Breeze, is there any other pros or cons to that material?
Yeah, like I said, the pro is really just the smoothness of it. If someone says, I absolutely have to have the smoothest finish that you have, okay, let's talk about Pebble Breeze. And again, it doesn't have quite as high of a compressive strength as an aggregate finish. And then the look is a little bit different too, because you are seeing aggregate in that finish, but I would say that you're really seeing the aggregate when you're looking in like shallow areas, right? Like you're looking at a Baja swim shelf or the steps, you're going to see the aggregate more. But if you're looking at the whole pool as a whole, the aggregate doesn't stick out to you as much. It looks a little bit more like a colored plaster finish, but without the mottling, without the blotchiness, without the streaking. It looks like that on the surface, but it's a lot more uniform is how I would describe it.
Okay.
So
I think every single time I saw that product be used, most of the time they're throwing, I think it was abalone in there. I could be wrong, but.
Well, Breeze has the shimmering seas in it.
Okay, is that what it is?
As
it is,
part,
yeah,
as part of the standard mix.
Okay, because it seemed like it always sparkled a lot.
Yeah.
I really do like the look of it.
Yeah. Well, the glass is in there as well. So you're getting the sparkle from both those aspects.
Are the glass is in there too? Because I thought polishing the glass would cause issues.
Well, in a normal exposed aggregate finish like PebbleBrilliance or PebbleEssence, you would not want to buff that finish because you're purposely, that's part of the exposed aggregate finish. But yes, in Breeze, there's glass. but that glass is being ground down. It's being polished down smooth with the rest of the finish.
Oh, I
So
gotcha. Okay.
little different, but yes, yeah, you're right. Normally you would not want to do that with an exposed aggregate finish, but with that particular one, glass is in there, but it's ground down. So, or polished down, I should say.
So FINA. Okay. So explain the difference between FINA and the other products and the pros and cons.
Yeah, sure. So that's a big one. So FINA is what I would call a plaster-like finish. So it looks like plaster, and we get that question a lot. What's the difference? I mean, this white FINA that I'm looking at looks like white plaster. So it looks like plaster, but there's a lot of differences. The key differences are when you talk about a plaster, it's a marble-based finish. So we always talk about the Mohs hardness scale, right? So like it goes from like talc, I think, or something that's a 1, and it goes to 10, which is a diamond, the hardest possible material that you could use. And so like all of our finishes contain silica aggregate. So silica is a 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. So very dense, hard aggregate. Whereas plaster or marble is a 3. So really, really soft material. So that's really the key difference is FINA looks like plaster, but it shares none of the characteristics with plaster. So FINA is again carrying out at almost 10,000 psi. So super hard, dense material. It has additives in it, polymers. It has polymers and additives, multiple polymers and additives to increase its strength. So that's really where FINA differentiates from plaster. And again, it uses silica aggregate. So there is still the same aggregate that's in Tec or Sheen is in FINA, just in a much smaller size. So that's also in large part what gives it its strength and durability. So yeah, FINA is incredible. Literally, once a FINA finish is completely cured out after a proper 30-day startup period or even longer, it's so hard that you can virtually pour straight acid on it and it'll barely touch it. I mean, so when FINA is cured, it could actually be difficult if you had scale to get it off, because just the FINA material is so dense and so hard that the acid really doesn't etch into it very well. So from a perspective of longevity for a homeowner, that's a good thing, right? Because again, if your water chemistry fluctuates and you have to go through a period where it's a little off, that FINA is gonna kind of take that abuse, if you will, much better than plaster for sure.
Okay. So so what's the con of FINA?
So the con is, and this is what we talked about earlier, is with the mottling, blotching, and streaking, all that good stuff.
Right.
There's different ways to install FINA. So one of the ways is just simply install it like a plaster pool, right? Hard, as we call it, hard trowel it.
Yeah.
You do that, that's when you're going to see the mottling, streaking, blotchiness. You're going to get a certain level of that on the pool finish. Now, there's an alternate though, and a lot of applicators do this, and it's weather dependent on. So if we're talking about right now in Texas or Arizona, where we're pretty mild weather, right? The high is maybe 70 something degrees. With a FINA, you could come back, the applicator could come back the following day, do a light acid wash. Now that light acid wash is going to burn off that cream and cement that's at the surface of that finish, which is causing that mottling and streaking and blotchiness. So it's going to burn that off. Then the applicator is going to come by and do a buff. So there's a difference between a buff and a polish. A polish is like what we talked about with Breeze, where the crew's in there all day long polishing that down. A buff is really like a quick hit of the finish with a polishing pad. So with the combination of a light acid wash and a buff, you're going to remove the vast majority of that cream and cement at the surface. So what that's going to do is mitigate that mottling blotchiness. Now, I don't tell people, hey, it's going to remove it 100%. If it's done properly, it really will remove the mottling and streakiness 100%. But obviously, to create a realistic expectation, I don't want to say use that 100%, but we'll mitigate the vast majority of that look and basically just even out the whole appearance of that FINA. Now, the con of doing it that way is that now the finish does have a little more texture because you're purposely exposing the small aggregate that's in that FINA, right? So depending on the end user, someone might say, well, before it was, acid wash and buffed, it was smoother to the touch, which is probably true. And by doing that acid wash and buff, you're going to get a little more texture in that finish. But the the pro is that you're really going to even out the appearance of that finish. And that's where most consumers on those hard child finishes have an issue, is that mottling. So yeah, we have an applicator actually in Tucson that's the largest purchaser of FINA in the state. And that's the method. And still to this day, they do more FINAs than anybody, I would say, in all of Phoenix or all of Arizona. And that's the method they use. They do an exposure method on FINA. And I've looked at their pools, and they actually look incredible. They look really, really good. So I'm an advocate for that method. You know, if someone wants to avoid that mottling.
Now you said when the high is 70, that would work. How does it work when it's 110 outside or 105?
Yeah, that's a problem. So that's a problem that we get into with breeze. That's one of them, because we can't, because that breeze finish has a lot of cement. We can't leave that drained and come back the next day. Otherwise we'll have cracks all over it. And that's the same thing with FINA, or that's the same thing with PebbleQuartz. Any finish that has more cement at the surface, we can only accomplish that, that polish or that acid wash and buff method in cooler weather. Now, what's the threshold? I don't have an exact number, maybe 80 degrees, but you start getting up to high 80s or 90s, it's probably getting too hot to accomplish that. So really, for that type of finish, one of two things needs to happen. A, the project needs to be planned out, hopefully, to where the finish is going in the cooler months of the year. Or if it's not, and it's just the timeline is like, hey, let's say it's late summer. This pool's ready for finish in August. Well, if the homeowner's patient and can wait, maybe they wait until October when it cools off, and then they can accomplish that. Now, an alternate to that, and I've seen builders do this in Phoenix, for example, with breeze, say it's July, it's 118 degrees in Phoenix. The applicator will trowel that breeze finish. It'll basically look like all that aggregate and everything will be buried in it. It'll look like a colored plaster. But then then they're just going to trowel it. They're going to fill the pool up. It's going to, get serviced and proper startup July, August, September. It starts cooling off in, say, October, beginning of November. The applicator drains the pool back down then in the cooler weather, then accomplishes the polish in the cooler time of year. And you could do that with FINA, with Pebble FINA as well. Just hard trowel it. You're going to have a little bit of that mottling and stuff in the summertime for the first 3 or 4 months of its life. Drain it back down when the weather cools off, and do that acid wash and buff and even it out a little bit. So that's an option as well.
Is it a situation where you could maybe use a tent? Like, I know they use tents up north for cold environments, but could you use a tent and then maybe add some kind of fan system or something to cool it off? Is that theoretical?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's definitely feasible.
Okay.
That's kind of one of those things where it would be a discussion with the applicator, right? Because I know for like high-end tile, for example, right, you get those tents, air conditioning and all that. Yeah, if it was a condition like that, I would say absolutely that would work great. But I think, as we both know, for practicality purposes, for most average people, it's like, I don't know what those cost to rent and set up, but it'll add probably thousands of dollars to the project. But yeah, no, if it's
not cheap,
if money's not an object, that's an option for sure.
Okay, so Brilliance and Essence, what are the differences between those two?
So Brilliance is, if you look at a sample of Brilliance, it looks like it's 80% glass beads. It's actually 50% glass. So it's 50% rock aggregate, 50% glass, but it looks like it's a lot more glass than 50%.
Okay.
Now, the sizing of that is our tech size aggregate. So it's definitely a larger aggregate size.
That's the difference, yeah.
And then Essence so Brilliance has 50% glass. Essence is our sheen size aggregate, but it's a little over 30% glass, so a little less glass. The cool thing about Essence is it is a very small, a uniformly small size glass that mixes and blends with the sheen size aggregate really, really well. So that matrix turns out really nice. You don't get areas, it all, where there's more glass in one area than another. It's a very, very even mix. That's what's really cool about Essence. And then one thing I'll add about Essence is it's a little less, it's easier to install. So if a crew can do PebbleSheen very well, they can do Essence well also. Whereas Brilliance is a little bit trickier to install. And I think if you ask most of our applicators, they'll tell you the same. it requires more precision. And if I don't want to say mistakes, but if deviations in the finish are present, they stick out to your eye a lot more. And that goes back to just the size of the aggregate, but also you have all this really brightly colored glass in there. So, so for example, some crews, our largest applicator in Phoenix, Cal Plastering, they have they have, 11, 12, 13 crews. Well, they only have a couple of crews that they'll send out to do Brilliance, just because it's a little bit more difficult of a finish to have turn out well. So that's another consideration or difference with Brilliance, where again, with Essence, it's really just like installing PebbleSheen. So a little more forgiving than Brilliance.
Would you recommend someone to use Brilliance in an environment where you're having prolonged freezes? Like in Texas, we get some freezes, but I mean, would you recommend it for someone up north because it has so much glass in it? Is that going to cause any issues or no?
Now with the freeze, are these pools, like the top of the pools, actually freezing? So the water in them is what, 40 degrees or so?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it would actually be like ice on the top. Because we've had situations.
Well, if you're going to keep a pool open in the north, you're going to have to heat it.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about Texas because from my perspective, I've seen, glass tile pop off the sides of walls all over. And maybe it's not all of it, you have some here and there, but I'm just wondering if that's.
Well,
I mean, I would say like any of our finishes, if they're underwater and it's not like it's a situation where it goes into freezing temperatures for a week or something, but it doesn't, it's not like a hard freeze where the whole top of the pool freezes over, like we're in Minnesota or something.
Yeah.
I would say probably fine.
Okay.
Just as with any of our finishes. But there's a reason why, like I said, Brilliance is 50% glass, 50% rock aggregate. When you start getting into, and what you may have seen, I don't know, is you get into these finishes. Well, we used to have one. We found out it didn't work very well. Beadcrete. Are you familiar with beadcrete?
Sounds familiar.
Yes, sir.
Back, 15 years ago. It's been a while, but that was 100% glass bead. Well,
oof.
There's an issue because what wasn't known at the time is that smooth, rounded glass bead doesn't hold into a matrix very well. So there was a lot of different failures with that as far as bonding to the wall, delaminating. So that's why with Brilliance, you have a mix of kind of angular, aggregate that locks in that smooth, rounded glass bead and creates that matrix where it holds together really well. So that's the reason why we don't want to go, or ideally, we don't want to use, or any of our formulas don't use any more than 50% glass. So, but yeah, I would say any of our finishes are going to withstand that environment unless it's like a hard freeze. And also that's also the reason why we don't ever bring most. I know again, back like in Phoenix, a lot of applicators or builders would bring the finish right all the way to the water line. That's a big mistake. That's where you have a failure. But as long as you have a tile at the water line, with some sort of movement joints or ability to flex and move, I think that's key as well when you start getting into those low temperatures.
Yeah, that you don't see those anymore. But back in the day, there were people that would leave tile off and PebbleSheen all the way up to the coping. And
would they still have the
actually
effervescence issue?
Oh yeah,
really?
So,
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that it was realized over a period of time that wasn't a good solution. Yeah. So, anyway, those pictures all disappeared.
They just got control deleted.
Yeah. So, okay. So, from a product line, you mentioned quartz once.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all have a quartz finish?
We do. So yeah, we came up.
Okay, I didn't know about this.
What's the name of it?
Yeah, it's very groundbreaking. PebbleQuartz.
Oh,
okay. Well, it's groundbreaking, so therefore that's why I didn't know about it. Okay, so
hey, we're gonna keep it simple though to highlight what it actually is. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because we talk about aggregate, right? Like all of our material is made of silica.
Mm-hmm.
So when you actually break down like what is silica, like where does the quartz name come from? Why did the industry name it quartz, right? So like I think if I'm not mistaken, because I did research this at one point, it's like the majority of quartz is silica. Silica is quartz. Like it's kind of the same thing, right? So, but when people think quartz in the pool for the pool industry, I think everyone knows like it's not plaster. It's plaster-like. It's not plaster. It contains aggregate. So I would say the key difference between, if you look at if you look at the difference between Pebble Fina and PebbleQuartz, both of them have very small aggregate. Quartz has a ever so slightly larger aggregate than Fina. So it actually, when you look at our samples, all of our quartz samples, with the exception of white, are exposed, so you can actually see the aggregate in them. So I would say quartz is a little bit more conducive to exposing. So like that conversation we had with coming back and doing the acid wash and the buff, I would say quartz is very conducive to doing that. And strength wise, it's a little less than Fina. It's sitting around 8,000 psi, so still not bad. 8,500, so still not bad, but not quite as dense as Fina. It doesn't have all those additives and polymers that Fina has in it. So, but still, no marble, right? It's not plaster, so it's still got some really good strength to it. And the price point is great. So that's another really key benefit of it, is coming from a price point. Again, we sell the aggregate to the applicators, but material cost wise, it is a significant savings over Pebble Fina. So not only is it a good application for certain residential applications, right? If it's a price conscious or budget market, still a really good quality material for the price. But another key reason why we brought it up, why we introduced it, is for commercial applications, because we really have we're going after the commercial market, because we really historically focus really on the residential market. So now we're really, we have a presence in the commercial market, but we're working on more presence in the commercial market. So quartz is a really good fit for that, because again, when you're talking about I'm just throwing a number out there, you're talking about a 30,000 square foot commercial pool, cost savings start multiplying exponentially on projects like that. So you can take, and hey, those commercial properties are still doing plaster. So we can say, hey, you can do quartz at the same price point you can install plaster for, and you're going to get a much more durable finish that's going to last a lot longer than plaster. It's kind of a no-brainer, really. So
the speaking of you do residential and you mentioned commercial, so remodeling, if you have an existing PebbleSheen finish, can you lay another layer over the top of that, or how does a remodel go?
I don't think that would bond well.
Well, I'm just curious on how.
Well, yeah.
So
the answer is actually
sandblast it off, or what do you do?
Well, so the answer is actually yes, but again, it's a market specific preference. So, for example, I know in Florida, at least from what I've heard, they do a lot of bond coats out there. So they'll have a finish that's bad, and they'll just literally there's different manufacturers that make bond coat products. So I think most commonly they're shot on with like a hopper gun, like you'd shoot drywall onto a wall. And that creates a really rough, somewhat aggressive texture for the new finish to bond onto. And then they'll go right over the top. So, I mean, some pools, from what I understand, can have 3 layers of interior finish on them. And commonly what they'll do is you have your tile line. So I'm not know if this is going to portray, but you have your tile line. They'll take and, chip down the material 18 inches to a couple feet at the most, right below the tile line. So when that new finish, sorry, I'm going this way, it's building up the thickness. They can fair that in and get that finish smooth with the existing tile, right? Say undercut the tile. So they use that little 18 inches of 2 feet to kind of blend it in and go back flush with the bottom of the waterline tile. So yeah, interestingly enough, I watched it on a couple pools in Washington State, right out of Seattle. One of our applicators did a bond coat method, and I'd actually never seen it. And I jumped in the pool and I rubbed my hand against that bond coat, and let me tell you, it was like extremely rough. I mean, it was like rougher than 50 grit sandpaper. It was probably like 20 grit sandpaper. I'm like, wow, this finish is definitely going to bond to this bond coat. So yeah, like I said, that's a market preference. Yeah, I know it, for example, in Arizona, nobody knows what a bond coat is. We get out jackhammers and jackhammer it all out down to the bare concrete shell. And that's the standard here in Arizona. So pros and cons, when you get out a jackhammer, obviously you resurface a pool 3 times, you start damaging the pool shell. You start compromising the shotcrete or concrete coverage over the reinforcing steel in your pool. So that's not really a good thing either. There's remedies to fix that, but arguably, now that I've seen it done, I don't know. The bond coat, they both have their pros and cons, but the bond coat thing is like, it's good because now you're not compromising the integrity of your pool shell. But again, market specific. If you ask someone to do a bond coat in Arizona, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. So I guess it depends on where you are.
Gotcha.
What do you guys do in Texas? Do you guys do bond coats or chip outs?
We typically chip it out. But the fact that that's a possibility, I think is very smart, especially when you're talking about, the possibility of you have someone, doing a demo and they're new on the job and, they dig a little too deep into the shell. So yeah, it's good to have that opportunity not to have that. So
I design new pools. I stay mainly out of the remodeling aspect of it. So although long ago, that's how I started, was doing remodels. But so we've gone and covered a lot of material here. The challenge is you have other things that PebbleTec does other than pool finishes, which I'd like to highlight just real briefly here. And maybe we can come back and talk about these in more detail later. But, you have LightStream. You guys incorporated LightStream tile into your product line a number of years ago, which is a very unique tile, I will say. Although I heard that y'all are coming out with some new tiles, or have recently come out with some new tiles through that product line, which were, I would say, a little more traditional in appearance. But do you want to speak briefly on that product line?
Yeah, no, LightStreams is great. I'm a huge fan of LightStreams. As a matter of fact, as a builder, it was the only glass tile. That's actually how I got introduced to PebbleTec, believe it or not. David Knox, the former owner of LightStreams,
great
had
guy.
a good relationship. Yeah, I love David. So I had a great relationship with him for years. Obviously I ordered tile direct from LightStreams. And so our former president, Daryl Eckstein, he installed LightStreams on his pool, and he called David up and said, hey, who do you recommend in Phoenix to install my tile? And he recommended me. And I thought that was kind of cool because I was a pretty small builder, right? So I'm like, out of all these qualified builders in Arizona, you recommended little old me. So that's how I got to know Daryl and some of the PebbleTec team initially. And yeah, like I said, I would only sell LightStreams. If someone wanted a tile, I said, look, here's the politically correct way that I would tell people. I said, look, I'm not installing a mass-made overseas glass on your pool for various reasons, because a lot of the glass that's being sold at the big tile distributors is recycled glass. The manufacturing methods it's just not that the methods are suspect, but the quality of the glass is suspect as to whether it will withstand a pool environment, because pool environment's arguably
Harsh.
perhaps the harshest environment you could install a tile into. So yeah, no, LightStreams is great. I mean, so here's the talking points I use is, there are tiles that meet industry standards for insulation in a swimming pool. There's probably a handful, maybe 5 or 6, and LightStreams being one of them. So, the TCNA handbook, Tile Council of North America, lays out standards for what type of tile or what type of insulation is conducive to as they call a wet or submerged environment. And so one of those things is thin set coverage, bond coat, as they call it. Bond coat meaning thin set or adhesive. Can you get 95% minimum coverage over that tile? That's the standard. Well, a lot of the tiles you see sold at the big national distributors have glass, particularly have mesh backing. Well, if you look at the mesh, what percentage of the surface area of the tile is the mesh covering? Like 40 to 50%. So by the very nature of having a mesh back tile, it technically does not meet industry standards.
Won't work.
And it
won't work.
It won't work.
We've seen it over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's amazing to me that the national pool tile distributors are getting away, because after all, most people on the surface, they say, well, it's a pool tile distributor. So I presume that any tile that is sold here is conducive to a pool environment. When you dig into the standards, you realize really quickly that particularly those mesh back tiles are do not meet the standard, period. So anyway, that's, one of the big things with LightStreams is, number one, it's a high quality glass. There's no recycled glass that's, integral to our glass. There's a lot of the other glass too, you'll see have a piece of paper that actually creates the color on the tile. So it's a clear glass, and then the light is reflecting off the paper to give you the color of the glass. Whereas our glass, LightStreams glass, is the coloration is integral to the glass itself. So just really night and day from a quality perspective. And then also a key feature of LightStreams is its ability to withstand thermal shock. So that's important. We talked about freezing conditions. The analogy I always use is like, if you're wintertime, it's cool, it's cold, you want to jump in your spa. You have a pool and spa combo, raised spa. So you have some exposed glass on the outside of that spa. And you heat that, the ambient temperature outside is 36 degrees, and you're heating the spa to 102. A couple people get in it and splash some 100-degree water on a 40-degree surface. If it's an inferior glass, that's when a lot of times it shatters and breaks. It just crumbles. If you have a good quality glass like LightStreams, it's going to withstand that thermal shock situation and not just explode and crack. So those are just a couple of the key highlights. Thermal shock, the quality of the glass, and again the fact that LightStreams actually doesn't have a backing. It's clear tape face. So you are literally bonding the raw glass, 100% of it, to the substrate or to the wall. So yeah, I love LightStreams.
And it's beautiful.
And it's beautiful. I forgot that part. It's to me,
stunning glass versus some of the other stuff. So
we just had a conversation. I think it was in Vegas, and it was about how the paper backing, like you put it in there, it would get moldy, and then the true color of it changes. And
So I'm an advocate of it. So that's what's on my pool.
Awesome!
My personal pool, and I've had 3 tiles come off in 22 years. So anyway, I mean, it's not. And that's not the story you get with most glass tile in Texas, because we have extreme thermal changes just like you guys do in Phoenix. So, but so just for sake of running through some things, you also work with, you guys purchased Grand Effects, which is, I think, the original fire bowl that exists out in the market. And it's not just fire. You have fire and water. You have fire by itself. You got water. You've got water and plants. I mean, you have all these different applications.
Right.
And those come in both concrete and in copper. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So we actually did not purchase Grand Effects. We do integrate we work with Grand Effects with some of their burners. So what we call our concrete fire pits and bowls, we call them cast stone. So they're GFRC concrete, right? So glass fiber reinforced concrete, super hard, super dense, concrete mix design. So obviously, again, conducive to an outdoor environment. They're not just a poured in place, bag of concrete that, with some of the competitors' material that's out there. So we actually manufacture all of our fire pits and our bowls in Scottsdale at our main corporate office. So right in the back of the warehouse there is where we make all those. But yeah, just, we have a few different shapes. We have a round fire pit. We have a 48 by 48 square. We have a 62 lineal. And then to your point on the bowls, we have fire only, fire and water only, planter and water. So you could actually plant a plant and then have a little scupper coming out of the front. And of course it's an illusion because the bowl doesn't actually fill up with water. It's the scupper itself has a plumbing connection that goes to it. But yeah, we have all those various options, and the quality, I mean, just looking at our products, you can really see that the fit and finish of our pits and bowls is really, really nice. We take the time to, like when we take them out of the molds, we buffet all the seams in the mold so you can't see any of that stuff. We use a penetrating sealer to make sure that they're going to withstand the elements outside. So yeah, we do a lot of those details on our products that kind of make it. Now on the Grand Effects burners specifically, Um, all of our fire options are available in manual burners, which actually are our own burners, as well as auto ignition. So specifically for Grand Effects, we our pits and bowls are optimized to use Grand Effects burners, which really, if you look at the auto burners that are on the market, Grand Effects is really the best quality auto burners that are out there. I mean, you can just again look at it and feel it. You pick up one of those Grand Effects burners. I mean, they have some serious weight to them. They're solid stainless steel, really really good quality components. So yeah, again, like our bowls and pits are optimized with the correct support plates and everything to be conducive to Grand Effects burners,
And then
auto burners.
you guys also have scuppers and different water features that are available as well, just as a feature standpoint.
We do, yeah. So we have a stocking line of scuppers. The top seller is the most common, but we can actually make any custom scupper that a builder wants. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of a time there, right? Because a builder a lot of times I've probably done myself and our Eastern Regional David Altum. I think you know David, right?
Very well.
So him and I probably are the two that do most of the custom scuppers, but I'll end up with a hand drawing or some sketch someone emails me, and then I'll make sure that I understand what they're looking for, what the builder's looking for, and then we create a CAD drawing, and we have the builder review and sign off on the CAD drawing. Then we actually go into production. So of course, like with anything custom, there's a bit of a lead time there, but we can absolutely make just about anything. I think there's only one drawing someone sent me that was so complicated. We actually priced it out, believe it or not, but the price was so high that the builder said, I think we're going to do it, maybe, change our design on this thing. But yeah, in large part, we can make really any type of water feature scupper that someone can draw up if it's reasonable to weld and bend and create. And then one thing I want to mention that we can do that's pretty cool that I don't think a lot of competition does. So the standard in the industry amongst the various scupper manufacturers is 316 marine grade stainless, right? And I think, as we know, like, people have a perception that stainless is like never going to corrode, but 316 marine grade can absolutely get surface corrosion on it, or worse if the water chemistry is not correct in that pool, or if it's aggressive. So one of the things we can do is we can make scuppers out of aerospace grade stainless, which is like a 400 grade stainless. And I know we sell a decent amount of those in Texas. I know David Altum's got a customer there that does those. But the cool thing is, again, like with anything, I don't want to say they're corrosion proof, but they're pretty darn close. We've done a lot of testing. We're pouring all sorts of chemicals on various grades of stainless, and that 400 grade aerospace was virtually untouched. So for the client that says, you know what, I want stainless, but I really don't want to have to think about coming out here and buffing off or cleaning off corrosion and all that stuff that may occur. Hey, let's quote you aerospace grade, and it's about the best grade stainless that you can put in a pool environment.
So can you do that for all of your features that you make? Use that?
The standard offerings that we have, which is trough flow, chute flow, and sheet flow, yes, we can do an aerospace grade, and it adds approximately 50% to the cost. So let's just say if a scupper was $300, that same scupper in aerospace would be around $450. Now, that obviously metal pricing can fluctuate, so that may potentially change in the future because metal is a commodity, like a lot of things. But yeah, what I would say is it's what I think, my opinion, I think it's a reasonable jump in cost for what you get in the durability and longevity of that.
Did y'all start doing that 4 years ago?
Pretty close. I want to say maybe a little less than that, maybe 3 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
So when I first started in the industry, I sold a shear descent. It was one of the first ones, and it was from Oric. They were the only ones making them at the time, and that was the grade of stainless that they did. So I had a little 12-inch unit that was very expensive at the time. The cost of all these features have come down drastically over the last, that was actually in 92. way back. Anyway, but yeah, you guys can handle a lot of creativity, I understand. So, but I appreciate we've gone a long time tonight
We went
talking.
over. This is probably the third time in
You know,
this year. So,
so
not often this happens.
Not often. And
Thank you.
we probably could have told more stories and gone longer, but
Oh yeah.
real briefly, we like to ask you a couple of questions just so
Sure.
we can know you a little bit better.
Yeah, I'll start it off. So I'm wondering what your favorite movie and book and I guess food, the type of food or whatever you want to go with. So
Oh, movie. I'm trying to think. I like a little bit of everything. There's some, I like goofy stuff, like, like stupid movies that are just like Joe Dirt or something like that,
okay.
back
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
day when that came out. That would be a type of movie I'd watch. But man, I don't know. I'm not like a huge movie guy. But what about you? What are you guys into?
I love it all, science fiction, historical, all that kind of stuff. Right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like Interstellar because I watched that last night. But
Okay, that's good.
yeah, but
I mean,
well,
yeah, to be honest with you, I'm kind of a geek. To be honest, I like documentaries, believe it or not. Like
yeah.
ever since I was young, I like the real life, real world stuff, so that's kind of what I'm into.
Oh yeah.
Um,
You have a favorite documentary? Specific subject, maybe? I don't know.
Probably not. I just like all that kind of stuff, just like learning about people, right? Like
Yeah.
history, people, political movements, stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff that I'm into.
So
It
food.
sounds pretty. I know it sounds pretty boring, but that's
Oh
the
no, it's
reality.
not boring. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's information. It's entertaining.
uh, yeah. As far as books go, I like reading things I can learn from. So like again, like pertinent topics. Like I'm reading a book right now called Super Communicators.
Okay.
So it's really just all about like how can you be the most effective communicator? What makes someone a really good communicator? Just pertinent to helping to like improve yourself, right? Like self-improvement type stuff was kind of what I'm into. How can you be a better leader? How can you communicate better? I don't know. How can you grow? That's kind of the stuff that I'm into reading.
Interesting.
Like I'm not a fantasy guy really. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, my fiance's into like Harry Potter and all that. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in Star Wars and all that. I'm like, nope, you lost me. I'm out.
You're like my brother-in-law. He's
Yeah,
very
I'm
similar.
out.
Yeah, he just left for Washington D.C. where we'll probably be going to museums for a week. So anyway,
Got some cool ones there.
so favorite place to travel?
Oh, that's an easy one. Bali. Bali's been my favorite place that I've ever been.
Cool.
I was there. Well, I kind of took a little epic backpacking adventure on my own solo about 12 years ago, and I was gone for about 5.5 months.
Oh wow.
And I was in Bali for a month, and I was at a surf camp there. And I still think about it. I told myself when I left, I'll be back every year. Well, it's been 12 years. I haven't been back, but man, I love surfing, even though I live in Arizona. I can't surf, but I was at a surf camp there, and I literally surfed 4 to 5 hours a day every day for a month. And number one, I mean, extremely good shape. Number one, but number two, my surfing improved to where I never imagined it would even be possible. Like even to this day, I'm like, I don't know how I did that because I couldn't do that right now. I was surfing, 8, 9 foot waves, which was just terrifying, by the way. But my surfing confidence got that good, being at this surf camp with guides every day. So anyway, really good memories of Bali. Awesome place. The people are just really friendly. Everything is just, I mean, the American dollar goes a long way there. Let's just put it that way. I mean, I was staying on places on the beach for $10 a night, $15 a night. I mean, just incredible. So I would go back there any day. It's beautiful. People are great. Food's amazing. It's cheap. Probably a little more expensive from 12 years ago, but I know it's still pretty good value. So that was a long answer to that question. But if you've never been to Bali, highly recommend.
Put it on your short list.
Yep.
So
I mean, it's one of those places where you could, if you wanted to, you could stay at a really high end, expensive place. But my opinion, you don't need to do that. You can live there. You could disappear there for a few months and spend half of what you'd spend in the US in a month. Let's put it that way. So
Awesome.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, again,
How about you guys? Where have you been? It's cool.
St. Martin was the last place I went in the Caribbean, and that was a lot of fun.
and
Nice.
I will always go to Colorado and backpack. So,
Mountain guy, huh?
yes, sir.
Nice.
So, although my wife likes the shore, so we get to do some of that too.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time and your information. And if someone has a question and they want to reach out to you, is there a good way to reach you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Should I give my phone number out right now? I'll probably get a lot of calls.
Whatever you'd like to do.
You might not want to. I don't know.
You can email me. That's probably the best. So my email is M for Matt Sharp, SHARP at PebbleTec, PebbleTec.com. No H on that PebbleTec, or it won't get to me. But
Goes to someone else.
email away. Happy to help however I can.
Okay. Thanks again, sir.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you having me, and appreciate the support, and definitely look forward to meeting you guys here in the near future.
Yeah. We'll see you around, I'm sure.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks again.